Dr. Shelley Martin-Young is a teaching assistant professor at Oklahoma State University in Stillwater. She taught in Sand Springs Public Schools for 30 years before retiring to finish her PhD. She teaches the elementary education department at OSU. So please welcome Dr. Shelley Martin-Young.
Oh my goodness, there's so many of you and I'm so intimidated. I came to share my stories and I've talked to so many of you and I'm like, I'm not talking. You guys know all of this, so there's nothing new for me to share. I've just been amazed that I have found my people. It's just, I have found my people and I didn't even know I needed people, but I found people. So I'm just gonna talk to you just a little bit about some of what I do. The research part of my work, the cemetery part, is my fun stuff. Stuff that I do for myself. It's not, sorry. I walk around when I teach. I'm not used to standing still behind a podium. It's not my academic stuff. It's what I do for me. I love cemeteries, and I guess all of you that are here are cemetery enthusiasts like me. I go to cemeteries all the time. That's not what I teach. I teach elementary education. I've already been introduced, so I'm going to kind of skip, maybe, this slide about me. I taught for 30 years in Sand Springs. I'm from Sand Springs. This is my 36th year in education. I retired after 30 years in Sand Springs, finished my dissertation. My dissertation was on the Tulsa Race Massacre, which is something I knew nothing about. I have never lived outside of Tulsa County, knew nothing about the Tulsa Race Massacre, and so that's what encouraged my research there. Cemeteries are stories, and stories is what I love. I love to hear people's stories. Now, my mom would tell you that I'm just nosy. I want to know everything about everybody. We would go to restaurants, and I would kind of listen to other people. Anybody else do that? Or is it just me? I just wanted to know the stories. And so when I started researching my family, I started learning those stories. And when I got my first subscription to Ancestry.com and newspapers.com, I was addicted. I mean, it's like I am on the computer all the time. And I started looking at cemeteries just because I remember when I was young, we would go to Arkansas in the summers, and the families always went to the cemeteries. And everybody told stories, and I loved hearing those stories. Talking to my grandfather and listening to his stories, I wish I would have written them down. I tell all my students now, they know that I love cemeteries, and I tell them, get those stories and write them down, because we don't. But cemeteries have history. Cemeteries tell stories. You can learn so much just by visiting cemeteries. Of course, looking at the headstones, you can tell a lot of things. You can tell marital status, the wife of Mrs. Blah. Women didn't have their own identity for a long time. I have found cemeteries now that have headstones that say husband of, which has made me happy. It's not just, wife of. You can tell a person's religious beliefs. You can tell how they died sometimes. This outlaw was shot by a posse of whatever. You can tell about organizations. Oklahoma is full of Masons. I didn't realize how many Masons there are in Oklahoma. You can tell a person's occupation sometimes by their headstone. I found a beautiful headstone, and just flat headstone, it says broom maker, and it has a picture of a broom. So I knew that he was a broom maker in his life. You can tell economic status by the cemeteries that you visit. When you see these huge, massive headstones, and then you see those beautiful handmade headstones. Those are my favorites. Besides the Native American cemeteries I visit, I think the handmade headstones are my favorites because you know that was made with love. You know, they use whatever. I've seen them made with marbles and pieces of ceramic. I've seen words misspelled. I've seen letters backwards, but that's what they had, and they made those. So I'm just going to tell you a few stories, maybe. And these are just examples of some of the symbols, and that's not really what I go for. I don't go looking for symbols. I look for the stories of these people. But as you can see, all of these are cemeteries that I visited. I visited 165 last year in Oklahoma. There's just Oklahoma. And probably already 50 this year. But I visit, but you can tell a marital status, the wife of, religious beliefs, you've got the Bible, you've got the open gates. You can tell this guy's a Mason. Royal Air Force cadet. Did you know that we had Royal Air Force training in Oklahoma? Yeah, I didn't. This is the GAR Cemetery in Miami. There's a whole section with our Royal Air Force cadets. This guy was a warrior. His headstone says warrior. He fought in the Modoc Wars. And that headstone is at Modoc Nation Cemetery and Mission. The Creek County Poor Farm in Bristow, have you seen that cemetery? All it is, all it used to be was just rocks. A Boy Scout troop came in and put these crosses. Of course, we're not really sure who all is buried there, but the Boy Scouts came in and put crosses, and some names are there. This is the Price Cemetery. This is an example of one of the handmade, this one. The S's are backwards, so that's an example. This person is a freed slave. Her story is there on the headstone. It's in Okmulgee, and it says she was born a slave in Louisiana and moved to Oklahoma Territory, Oklahoma in 1910. And the story of her life is that the reason she was able to come to Oklahoma, she came on a train, was because her master helped her come to Oklahoma. He freed her, and then he helped her get her and her family to Oklahoma. Isn't that a beautiful story? But the stories that are there are my favorites. I just want to know who everybody is. And you can see stories of love, stories of betrayal, tragic deaths, murder, suicide, mysteries, legends, hauntings, of course. I've visited all the supposed haunted cemeteries in Oklahoma. But all these stories are found in cemeteries. And so I'm just going to share with you a few of the stories I found. I'm writing a book, Oklahoma Cemeteries and the Stories They Tell, and so these are some of the chapters of my books: Native American history, pioneers, outlaws and lawmen, preachers and teachers, soldiers, criminals, politicians, strong women, children, and entertainers. Those are just some of the people. So I'm just going to tell you a couple of stories. I know I only have like 20 minutes to talk and then time for questions, so I'm going to try to go really fast through some of my stories. But some of the stories in our Oklahoma cemeteries, these are just a couple of my favorites. Native American cemeteries are my favorites to visit, and I don't know why. The peace that's there, for some reason, it's just a beautiful piece. But you do learn a lot about our Native American heritage in Oklahoma. And I don't know if you know Rebecca Nugent. I found her in Hobart. This is her headstone, and she had this insignia on her headstone, and I learned that she was a survivor of the forced removal on the Trail of Tears. So the Cherokee Nation, and I don't know enough about it, but they find their survivors and commemorate with this plaque. But this is her. She was the last survivor of the Cherokee survivor of the Trail of Tears. She lived to be 96. She did give a first-hand account, and her story is in a book called Indian Removals, and I can't remember the author's name. Grant somebody. But she told of her story. She was 3 when her family came from Georgia. And she told of the trip that her family made from Georgia to Oklahoma. This is Blueford Duck. Anybody heard of Blueford Duck? Yeah. Anybody heard of Bell Star? Blue Duck. Yeah. Blue. This is his headstone. What I do when I go to cemeteries, I'm not what they call a cemetery tourist. A cemetery tourist is somebody that goes to find famous people. I look at the cemetery, I take pictures of headstones that I love. I find the old ones. I find broken ones. This is his headstone in Catoosa. And then I come home and I look up the people, and I found so many stories by doing that. I didn't know who Blueford Duck was. This is him with Belle Starr. You know, there's a supposed relationship, but we're not sure. But he was an outlaw. Oklahoma's cemeteries are full of outlaws. Don't we have a fabulous history? He was a cattle rustler. He was a robber. He and his friend got drunk one night, shot a farmer for no reason. They just went to this farm, shot a farmer, shot at a kid, ended up hitting the horse, killing the horse, and went on down and tried to shoot somebody else but missed. They were drunk. And he and the other guy, you guys know these stories better than I do, went to hanging Judge Parker's court. They were sentenced to be hanged. Then his partner, got off, and supposedly with the help of Belle Starr, his sentence was commuted to life in prison. He did get out. He was pardoned when he got tuberculosis, and he died shortly after. But I didn't know all that history because before I went to the cemetery and saw that. Creek Cemeteries, oh, no, he's Creek Indian. Look at his headstone. Can you even tell anything? I found his name, but that's all I could see. So then I had to go home and look him up, and I found Sanford Ward Perryman. Anybody know Sanford Ward Perryman? Yeah, he has a fascinating story. He went to the Coweta Mission School. He was sent to the Coweta Mission and Tallahassee, both of those missions. He ended up helping interpret the Bible. He married a teacher from the Tallahassee Mission, and he is a soldier, a veteran. Many of our Native American people were veterans. He has a fabulous story. This cemetery is supposed to be haunted. It's one that is in Coweta. You walk across this beautiful bridge to get to it, and it was a mess until the last few years. Somebody took over the cemetery and has kind of marked what they think are the graves. Of course, so many graves we don't really know. You know, the older cemeteries, and those are the cemeteries I visit, we don't really know their stories. We don't really know if that's really where they are. But a group did come in and has cleaned up this cemetery, but it's back kind of in pretty bad shape. Creek cemeteries are my favorites, with the spirit houses. Beautiful. These are in Tulsa, Bristow, Okmulgee, Seminole. Those are my favorites. Of course, we have lots of outlaws in Oklahoma, and I will admit I was a tourist for Belle Starr. I went specifically to find Belle Starr because supposedly she's related to me. You know how that family search thing tells you, I haven't proven anything. Supposedly, she's related to me. So I had to go and find my relative and see. This is her grave. Kind of surprised me. It's not really well taken care of. That's something I have found is that so many of these cemeteries aren't taken care of. So many of the cemeteries, we don't know the stories. But we know Belle Starr. I'm sure all of us know her story. She grew up kind of well-to-do, went to a women's college, learned to play the piano, and then she kind of got involved with some criminals. She did serve 9 months for cattle rustling. A lot of things weren't proven. Her relationship with Blue wasn't proven. Supposedly she had a relationship with one of the youngers as well. Either her or her daughter, we're not sure. But after her third husband, Sam Starr, after he died, she kind of turned her life around. But then not 3 years later, she was riding her horse home and was shot in the back. And her murder is still an unsolved mystery today. She was kind of fancy. She liked to ride side saddles. She wore black velvet riding gear with a hat with a plume on it. She carried 2 pistols and a whole thing of ammunition. And she was a sharpshooter. Elmer McCurdy. I think he's my favorite story. Do you know Elmer McCurdy? Does anybody not know Elmer McCurdy? Because I don't want to tell the story if you guys know. Oh, okay. So Elmer McCurdy, poor guy, bless his little heart. He wanted to be a criminal so bad, but he wasn't good at it. He just, my mom would say, bless his heart. So he tried to get these jobs, and he wasn't very successful at any of them. He was in the Army for 3 years, and he learned how to blow up things. And so nitroglycerin was what he liked to use. And so bless his heart, he wasn't successful. He tried. So he had his little posse, and the first attempt was this train. And he had heard that it had like thousands of dollars in a safe. And so he got his posse, he got his nitroglycerin, he gets on the train, he goes to the safe, they had big safes on these trains, lights the nitroglycerin, he used too much, it blew up the entire safe, including all the money. He got a few coins, but most of those were melted. That was his first attempt. So they disbanded. So then they thought, well, maybe we can just rob a bank. So sometime later, he goes into Kansas, I believe it is, to rob a bank. Here he is with his nitroglycerin again. It took him 2 hours to dig into the side wall of this bank. They dig into the bank, light their nitroglycerin. It blows up the wall of the bank, but it doesn't blow up the safe. So this time he didn't use enough. They tried lighting it again. Nothing happened. Again, they got a few coins that were in a tray. Well, his final attempt, bless his heart, he had heard there was going to be $400,000 in a safe on this train. So he got his buddies again. He got on the wrong train. The train that he got on had no money. It didn't have a safe, so he didn't even have anything to blow up. So he ended up with some coins, a bottle of whiskey, I think a knife, a few little things. So I guess he got depressed. He and his friends went and drank. He got drunk. He went and stayed in somebody's loft. And there was a $2,000 bounty on his head. A posse came, 3 guys, lots of shooting. He ended up dying. That's not the end of his story. No, it's not. So nobody would claim Elmer McCurdy. So the funeral home guy, wouldn't release his body. He said, I'm not releasing him if somebody doesn't pay this $5 bill for what I did. Nobody would do it. So he dressed him up, put a shotgun beside him, propped him up in the window of the funeral home. Now my stories, I'm just kind of, telling them short. I'm trying to go fast. Propped him up in the window. Then he started charging like 5 cents for people to come and look at this body. Back in the day, they used a form of arsenic to embalm. Well, what that does is mummify the body. So if you Google Elmer McCurdy, you can see his mummified body. So for years, this funeral home made money, kind of like a sideshow. Carnivals offered to buy him. Lots of people offered to buy him to put him in a sideshow. He wouldn't sell. Well, 2 guys came up with a scheme, and they convinced the funeral home owner that he was the brother, the long-lost brother of Elmer McCurdy. So he turned him over, and these guys were really carnival owners. So here's this body dressed like this with a gun. And so he was carted around to different carnivals, different sideshows for years and years and years. He was in all these carnivals. Well, they got to the point where they didn't even realize he was a real person because he had become mummified. And people had poured wax on him, and they had him in different places. Long story short, he ends up in a carnival amusement park in California. And his body was in like one of the rides. If you are from Tulsa, the Phantasmagoria, like one of those rides. He was in there. They thought he wasn't real. They were there to film The $6 Million Man. Now, is anybody old and know what that is? I tell that to my students. They have no idea. But they were there to film the $6 million man, somebody bumped into his casket and the arm broke off and there was actual bone. That's how they knew he was a real person. It was because there was bone. And so through forensics, they figured out who he was. 66 years later, he was buried in Summit View Cemetery, Boot Hill, in Guthrie. That's Elmer McCurdy. Google him and look at this. Okay, it's not moving. Oh! Sorry. Now I need to go back. Of course, with our outlaws, we also have lots of lawmen in Oklahoma. They're everywhere. A couple of these, I just wanted to add their pictures really quickly. There's some really cool stories about our lawmen. These two, this is Tillman, and this is Neil Brown, both in Chandler. You can see he has this humongous statue, headstone, whatever this is. Tells about him, and look at Neil Brown's. Neil Brown's was unmarked for many, many, many years. His is now just a piece of wood. He was a deputy marshal, he was a marshal. They worked together. There are some fabulous pictures of him with Wyatt Earp, with Neil Brown, with Wyatt Earp and Bat Masterson, both marshals. This gentleman came to Oklahoma, was a marshal a couple of different times. When he was 71, they sent him to, who knows? I can't remember. Cromwell to clean it up. Cromwell was a loose town. Loose women, gambling, easy alcohol, and they sent him to clean it up. He was 71 years old. But there were some people there that were supposed to be lawmen, but they were bad guys. He got shot and killed there. But I love the difference in the two headstones. Neil Brown worked with him, and his is just a piece of wood in Chandler. Temple Houston, everybody know who Temple Houston is? Sam Houston's son. I went to Woodward. That's his headstone in Woodward, Oklahoma. Amazing story, and I'm running out of time to tell his story, so I'm going to go really fast. Look him up. Buy my book when I ever get it published. Temple Houston and his whole family has these little headstones. They're all in a row. Great story. Lawyer, frontier lawyer. Preachers and teachers, of course. Union Mission. Everybody familiar with the Union Mission? Beautiful cemetery right now. It's not very well taken care of. This is what you see typically. It's just rocks with a little tin headstones. That's the entrance to it over here. And there is a monument that tells about the mission. And then right across the street, there's another monument. That's where the first printing press was. And there were so many firsts at this mission. I want to tell you all of them because they're really cool. It was established in 1820. It was the Osage Nation mission. It was the site of the first mission. This is in Oklahoma. The first mission in Oklahoma. The first recorded marriage. The first school. The first printing press. The first book published. The first Christian burial. First commercialized salt works. First white settlement. First white and Indian cemetery. And at the time, Oklahoma's oldest grave marker. All of those at this mission. He was the original missionary. This was another one. And in the kids, most of these are children that died. We don't know much about any of them. Okay, I'm almost done. This one, anybody hear of Elizabeth McCoy? Unless you're in Sepulveda, you probably haven't. She really kind of got me started in looking people up because I looked her up first. Because it says Elizabeth McCoy, MD, 1880, a female doctor. I looked her up. Not only was she female, she was African American. So in this time period, a doctor, she had a pharmacy, and she was a doctor in Sapulpa before she passed. And this is her headstone. And I'm glad it has her MD there. I was just really impressed looking at her education. This is Miss Appleby, Jane Captain Appleby. Anybody know her? Somebody you don't know. She is buried in the Captain Cemetery out by, I have it written down, I don't want to look at my notes. She is in the middle of a field. You can get to her cemetery, but she's in the middle of the field. It's called the Captain Cemetery. Augustus Captain was her husband. I put her here as a strong woman. She grew up with Osage Indians. She was adopted into the Osage Indians. Her father left her to join the Civil War when she was 4. And so she grew up and was adopted by the Osage Indians. Her story, of course, was, she told her story, and it's written down, and I have it. Her obituary is amazing. She grew up in poverty, illiterate. Her grandson actually taught her to read late in life. But then she became one of the richest women in the Tulsa area, and she had a car. And so the story about her is amazing. Again, I don't have time. I know the next group is here. And then, of course, we have another Houston, Talahina Houston. Who's she? She's the wife of, or supposed, legend says, wife of Sam Houston. She was buried somewhere else, and she was reinterred at Fort Gibson National Cemetery, which is a beautiful cemetery. If you haven't been there, you need to go. Veterans, of course. We have lots of veterans, and I'm not going to take time to tell their story. Children are the ones that really upset me, bother me. I don't know. This is from the Union Mission. This grave is over to the side by itself, and the only thing it says is freed infant slave. That's all it says, right there. The rest of the children from the mission are on the other side. So this one's by herself, himself, but all it says is freed infant slave. To me, that's pretty powerful. I don't know her story. I want to know the story. This cemetery, if you've not been, I love the cemetery, Twin Mounds Pioneer Cemetery in Glenpool. The families have gotten together to tell the story. And so you can see this is a placard. They have signs by all the headstones that tell the history or the stories of the people, which is what I'd love to do. This one is just for this, which is a child, and it just talks about how, there were so many babies that were lost because we didn't have the medicine or the doctors that we have today. I put in Heart's Delight just because I love her name. She was 12. She was Choctaw. She is buried in the Choctaw Nation Cemetery in Scullyville. But her name is Heart's Delight. Isn't that beautiful? This is a child that I have no idea. Lambden Cemetery in Prague. To get to this, I had to walk through weeds that were like up to my neck. So it kind of surprised me that this one has the teddy bear and the flowers, because most of them, there was nothing. But obviously it's a child. There was a little Easter basket, but nobody takes care of that cemetery. Hugo, of course, several people have asked me today, have you been to Hugo? Of course. That's what I did for my birthday last year. Went to Mount Olivet Cemetery, amazing cemetery. Hugo has all the circus entertainers. Showman's Rest is a whole section. I've looked up so many of them, and there's some fabulous stories about these circus entertainers. They used to winter. I thought, why Hugo, Oklahoma? Why do we have a circus cemetery in Hugo? I guess the little traveling circuses used to winter there, and so many people from different circuses are buried in Showman's Rest. You also have Lane Frost is there, a couple of rodeo people in a different section. And, of course, there are the hauntings. I have had to visit them all. Anybody familiar with this one? Okay, this is a witch's husband in Catoosa, supposed to be haunted. And the story is she was a witch, and when he died, she tried to bring him back to life. And she kept him at home for a long time, and she thought she could do some spells to bring him back to life. Well, the city found out, and they decided to get him. So they would take him and they would bury him in the city cemetery. She would come, dig him up, take him back home. And this happened over and over. Now, this is just the story. Happened over and over and over again. So finally, when the city came to get him, they covered him in the cement. And now people, the story is if you don't leave a coin there when you visit, then you're going to be haunted. You know. I don't know. I've been to all the supposedly haunted. There are 2 in Enid that are supposed to be haunted. This one is in Jesse Creek Cemetery, Bartlesville. Supposed to be haunted. I thought it was beautiful. You know, but you have to have the legends too. So, I love cemeteries. I love the stories they tell. I love researching my family history. I have 5 million pictures I wanted to share, but I don't have time to share all the stories. So go out, go to your cemeteries, look at people, do some research, read about them, help me with my book, send me some pictures. They're beautiful, they're places of history. They're where you get to know your roots, is in those cemeteries. You know, if we don't have those cemeteries, I'm afraid that my son's age, they're not going to go visit cemeteries anymore. There are so many cemeteries already that are bulldozed over, not taken care of, and I'm afraid that we're going to lose some history. Unknown, of course, our cemeteries are full of unknown, and these break my heart the most because I don't know their stories. Who are these people? Whose stories have we lost because we don't know who they are?